Greetings from Helsinki and welcome to SIVISTA's and FA's webinar on education and immigration in a changing demographic landscape. I'm Anna-Kaisa Tikkinen, Senior Advisor at Finnish Education Employers SIVISTA, and I'll guide us through today's interesting program. The following 90 minutes, it's packed with insights and experience. FA's project manager Axel Day will first open the event officially, and then we'll hear from CEO Susanna Niinistö-Sivoranta from Finnish Education Employers. A brief keynote today comes from OECD's senior economist Emily Farci, after which our four panelists will discuss the theme and we'll introduce them later. SIVISTA's director, Heikki Kuutti-Uusitalo, will then continue to close the webinar at 11:30 CET. A couple of practical matters before we begin. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take any comments from the audience, but should you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the chat. This webinar is recorded, and the recording along with the material will be sent to you as soon as they are available in the near future. But now let's move on with the program. Axel, please, the stage is yours.
So welcome everybody to this webinar. This session is organized as part of the European Education Month, an initiative from the Educational Leadership Network Europe, which is a committed community of education stakeholders working to enhance collaborative school leadership in Europe. If you'd like to watch more webinars, there's still 1 week and a half left, so feel free to register on the Educational Leadership Network Europe website, which I'll put the link in the chat later. Over to you, Anna-Kaisa.
Thank you, Axel. Glad to have you with us. And now I'll give the floor to Dr. Susanna Niinistö-Sivoranta.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. So nice to have you here online, and greetings from Helsinki. We have actually a very special day because we have President Zelensky here visiting our President Alexander Stubb, and we are just nearby the castle of the presidents. Okay, so I have a case from Finland, and it's about that, how the predicted demographic developments shape the education sector, and few points about that. But before that, a few words about us, SIVISTA. We have 430 members in our alliance, and we operate from the early daycare sector to the university sector and everything between. So the whole kind of education sector is represented in SIVISTA. We are a member of the Confederation of Finnish Industries and of course member of European Federation of Education Employers. I think we have quite inspiring vision. Finland is a prosperous, open and appealing nation, renowned for having the best educated population, where of course knowledge and creativity drive progress. And of course, this leads to that the world is a little bit better place in the future. Okay, about this demographic development. First, kind of a figure where we are going for the year 2070. If our immigration level will stay in the same level as we have now, so about 40,000 people, our population would continue to grow. We know that birth rate continues to decline, or at least it's really something that is quite relevant. With the current birth rate, there would be only 700,000 people under the age of 50 by 2070. Very important figure for education sector. And at the same time, by 2070, there would be 2 million people aged 65 and over, including myself, if I'm still alive in that year. And you must also notice that regional differences are significant in Finland. So South Finland, the situation is in the south of Finland, it's totally different than in the north part of Finland. Also, of course, urban cities and small villages, we have different kind of situation. What does this mean? So it's challenging the education sector, but how? We can see that we all know that schools are really, really important part of service network in our society. And low birth rate challenges this service network. We know that immigration will help if we can retain the experts in Finland. The functional capacity of the aging population must be maintained. And Finnish people's desired number of children does not come true. So how about the quality in education, which is a really important part when we think about the function in society and attraction factors. So we have a high quality education system, and we have a challenge in that. How do we keep the accompanying families who are coming with immigrants, with experts? How can we keep them in Finland? Because we know that 45% of experts who come to Finland, they also leave the country. So they have left the country within 5 years. So we should do something to keep them here. And then a few thoughts about that. How can we, in different levels of education, to cooperate and build up this open, international and tolerant Finland? First question is about change management or leadership. And I think we need both. But if we think about the different dimensions in this, first, I think that we are now kind of struggling with this first strategic dimension in Finland. We have a lot of different kind of reforms going on in our education sector. And it's kind of a good, because we need shared vision. We have to ask the questions, what kind of is the future? What kind of resources we have? What we want to do? What kind of field of education we see in the future? So we are having this discussion in Finland right now, and this part of the demographic development is part of this discussion. But then at the same time, we of course have operational dimension going on all the time. Schools, universities, they are having their everyday life, trying to build up the future for our young people. But we can also ask questions like how to arrange or change curricular work, how to use resources that are not growing, we know that, and how to create new kind of learning environments to support future learning. And that's kind of action plan that we have to do in different schools and different regions. And then, of course, there is always this individual dimension as a leader. I think at schools, we are kind of all leaders. Students, they lead their own learning. Teachers are guiding them, helping them in that, leading the process of learning. And then we have principals who are leading the education at the school. So what kind of decisions do we have to make? What kind of support we need? How to inspire people in these difficult times? Because we have to also lead hope to inspire people to the future. So I think we need both management and leadership in all these levels. As I already mentioned, we have different kind of reforms in our government program at the moment. One of them is, for example, this future work for comprehensive schools, and also a big reform for our vocational education and for higher education. We are going to renew our curricula also, for example, in the comprehensive schools in a national level, doing the local work all the time. In organizations, we have different kind of tools to make this future happen. Pedagogical leadership, for example, is one of the tools, and it's really important. Guidance, support, different kind of processes, we can all have them in the organizational level. And at the same time, remember that we have students, pupils who want to learn, and we have to also try to change our learning environments, take care of that this increased openness, social media, social networks, digitalization are taken care of also. And in a leadership, I think very important thing is to build up the sense of community and sense of the need for the unknown. But I believe that we could do it because we have research, and it has identified many of those basic leadership practices across the many schools, that actually schools are quite good in setting direction, developing people, improving organization, developing trust, and building a safe learning environment. I think that's more important than ever. And then conclusions. We all know that change is here. It's not only this change that or phenomenon that I just described. We have a lot of going on. So importance of inclusivity, interaction, peer support, interaction, feedback, that we have time to discuss about this is really, really important. And I think it's even more important in future schools. And that's why it's necessary to highlight the significance of supportive and interactive leadership also. Because learning together and reaching objectives, it really requires that we bring the elements of pedagogical leadership into the everyday school life. No matter if it's a daycare or university, we need strong pedagogical leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susanna, for these insightful words. Next, we're coming to our keynote. The OECD has published a series called Working Together for Integration, which includes 5 case studies. They're made in Sweden, Finland, Norway, Flanders, and most recently in Iceland. And today we have OECD's senior economist, Emily Farci, to share some of the findings from this topic in Finland and elsewhere. Emily, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Anna-Kaisa. Let me just share my screen. I have some slides to share with you. Okay. Voilà. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about working together, about how labour markets are doing, both on the Finnish labour market and some of the slides more generally covering Nordic countries and elsewhere in the OECD. As Anna-Kaisa mentioned, it's based on work. The report on Finland now was back in 2017, 16, 17. So, you know, the picture has changed somewhat since then, but we've got some figures of the more recent data also to share with you. So the context of integration in Finland. Finland has a small migrant population, less than 10% of the population, but it's been growing quite rapidly. The majority of migrants were from Estonia and Russia. They account for 1/3 of all migrants in Finland, but that's been from a more diverse range of countries in more recent years. And a bit of the background of the local population, the native-born population are very highly skilled in Finland compared to other OECD countries. And so low-skilled employment is fairly limited, which can be a challenge for some of the less skilled migrants who arrive on the Finnish labour market. So less than 5% of the Finnish working population are employed in low-skilled employment. So a bit of the context. Here, if we turn to the OECD more generally, you can see that in an OECD context, Finland does have a relatively small population of migrants, even compared to other Nordic countries. This is the immigrants who are born outside of Finland or outside of the country represented. And then I can also add to that the native-born children with 2 immigrants' parents. And again, you can see in Finland, it's a relatively small population for the moment, similarly in Iceland. And that really points to the fact that it's a the immigration in Finland and Iceland is a relatively new phenomenon. So the next generation have not yet a very large population, but that will change. So there is a small but growing population in Finland, and in some countries which have a slightly longer history, such as Sweden, it's a higher proportion of the total population. In Iceland, it's a very relatively recent phenomenon, but obviously the more limited population means that the share of immigrants is more substantial there. So in 2023, 4.4 million immigrants lived in Nordic countries. That's an increase of almost 50% compared to a decade earlier. So if we talk a little bit, we spoke a little bit about labour shortages and the demographic change that's in Nordic countries, but also elsewhere in the OECD. I think an important point to bear in mind is that the foreign-born population are younger than the native-born population. And you can see this with this sort of population pyramid that we've plotted out here. The bulge in the foreign-born population is really in the prime working age between sort of 25 and 45, whereas among the native-born in the Nordic countries, it's much, much older. And if we were to break that down by country, you'd see that, again, those countries such as Finland and Iceland, where the population is more recent migrant population, that bulge would be somewhat lower and sort of more skewed towards the bottom. So they're really an important part of the population, but an even more important part of the working age population. And they have the potential to boost productivity. So in this graph, I wanted to break down the migrant population by their education levels. And you can see both the EU-born on the left-hand side and those who are coming out from outside the EU on the right-hand side. And here, I mean, the main takeaway is that education levels of migrants in the Nordics are high in international comparison. So those with a tertiary degree account for a large proportion of the population. So there's really a strong potential. So let's turn briefly now to the labour market outcomes and some of the policy challenges. Unemployment rates, there's a big gap between the native-born and the foreign-born population. So we've seen that there's a strong potential, but this potential isn't fully being realised in many Nordic countries. You can see that in Finland, there's a very large gap in the unemployment rate, and even larger in Sweden. When we think about these gaps, it's important. I mean, when we lay out the countries like this, it's tempting to think, oh, Sweden's doing really badly, Finland's doing pretty badly, but there's important context to bear in mind when interpreting these results. I mean, we've seen the education levels broken down, but there's also a number of other reasons that are really behind these. Sweden, for example, has a high proportion of humanitarian migrants, which tend to bring with them lower education, but not only that, they've had a long journey often, so they've been outside the labour force. Maybe they haven't been able to bring proof of their qualifications or even of their citizenship with them. So all these things can stymie the integration with the labour market. There's also the education system that they come from might mean that they struggle to find employment, and also language disparities, and we'll come to that soon. But in comparison with countries some at the other end of the spectrum, for example, Ireland, France even is not doing very well, but some of these countries have much less in terms of linguistic hurdles to jump. So that really does make a difference. There's also the duration of migrants. I mentioned earlier that the Finnish migrant population is relatively new, and we can see that predominantly, particularly for family migrants and humanitarian migrants, the integration with the labour market does take time and improves over with the years passed in the country. So all these factors are going on behind these headline results. But what the point is that there is still some ground to be gained in terms of making the most of Finnish and Nordic in general migrant populations. So one of the things, turning to the policy, is recognition of prior qualifications. So we can say that the migrants are highly educated, but if they can't put those qualifications to use in their host country, then that's not going to take them very far, and you're going to see a lot of overqualification. What we can see from this figure is, to some extent, it's the inverse of what you see. So these are the the migrants who didn't apply for qualification recognition. So actually, those at the left-hand side of the figure are those that are doing pretty well, because there's a large proportion, nearly half of the migrants did apply for qualification recognition. So Sweden, Norway, you have a lot of migrants applying for qualification recognition, which is a very positive thing. Here we're just showing the reasons why those that didn't apply. Again, sort of the small share that's accounted for by cost or complexity is a very strong sign that Sweden and Norway are doing pretty well in that regard. Finland still has some ground to catch up. There's only sort of slightly over 20% of migrants who do apply for recognition of their qualifications. So there's quite some ground to work with. But is this translating into their labour market outcomes? And here I've shown you the share of educated native and foreign-born work that are working in highly skilled jobs. So you can see that this dark sort of diamond shape, which is the native-born, is pretty high in Nordic countries. So those who have a high level of education tend to work in high skill-intensive positions. If you look at the migrant population here, we've broken it down into those who are born in the EU and those who are born outside the EU, and you can see that there's a big disparity. And many of those who are born, particularly outside the EU, but have a high level of education, are struggling to find work that really puts their education to use. For example, in Finland, you can see that there's a very big disparity. Just slightly over half of those highly educated migrants born outside the EU are working in highly skilled sectors. That might be partially linked to what we saw on the previous slide, that very few of them get their qualifications recognized. And without recognized qualifications, it's very difficult to find high-skilled work. But what's interesting in Finland is actually those who are coming from EU countries are still, as much and slightly even more using their skills in Finland. So that perhaps indicates that European qualifications are sort of already recognized by employers. So this qualification recognition is really something that's relevant for those born outside of the EU. And there's a similar picture in other Nordic countries, to a lesser degree in Denmark. Okay. So another way that Nordic countries tend to do pretty well, I mean, this is more symptomatic of the general strength of Nordic labour markets in adult lifelong learning, but participation in adult education and training is high in Nordic countries. And you can see that, more than close to 40% in Sweden of migrants have had some form of participation in adult education and training. So that's not just that there's this high proportion that come with strong skills, but that there's a large proportion of migrants that continue to strengthen their skills even when after their arrival. And this is important because actually what we can see is that migrants are making an important contribution to some shortage sectors. And here we've shown the share of native and foreign-born workers that are working in the health and social work sectors. And more than 1 in 8 foreign-born are employed in human health and social sector in Nordic countries. And you can see in some countries, Finland included, but particularly Sweden, this is actually, they're even overrepresented compared to the native-born. So it's really an important contribution they're making there. So what's one of the other hurdles to integration that we spoke about? Well, language. You can see that self-reported participation in language courses among immigrants with less than 10 years of residence is pretty high, particularly in Finland and Denmark. You can see that really nearly all migrants are participating in language courses. And this is partially to do with the introduction program that really holds language courses central. And it's also partially to do with the fact that in Nordic countries, language hurdles really are more substantial than elsewhere. Again, Ireland, France, these are languages that are spoken pretty widely across the globe, even Switzerland, Belgium. But yeah, Nordic languages, very rarely spoken and quite hard to learn, particularly Finnish. I mean, you know this better than I do, but I think it's the country with the largest linguistic difference between the native-born and the foreign-born in the country. So while it's fairly similar to Estonian, the difference with the languages that other migrants hold is really, it's a big chasm to cross for them when they first arrive. But policy is addressing this. So let's turn to some of the outcomes of that. This is the share of immigrants who arrived with a beginner's level or less and yet reached advanced or higher language proficiency after 5 years in the host country. And here you can see the strong performance of language training, particularly in Sweden and Norway. Finnish, again, slightly fewer achieve advanced level, but again, one has to think of that in the context of this very large linguistic distance that migrants have to cross. Voila. So women are particularly vulnerable in the labour market. And here I'm plotting the employment rate disparity of EU and non-EU migrant women. So you can see that particularly non-EU migrants women are falling really very far behind their native-born counterparts. But that's true in Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway, and Iceland, particularly in Sweden and Finland, though. I mean, part of that is a story of, in Sweden at least, and to some extent Finland, the high proportion of humanitarian migrants. But I think there's other stories going on, particularly in Finland, and we'll come to that shortly. So many of these women aren't actually looking for work. So here's the share of the foreign-born women outside the labour force by reason for not searching for work. And the numbers that aren't searching for work aren't particularly high in an international context. There's larger proportions in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Netherlands. But I think there's also some telling results if we break down the reason why they're not searching for work. Particularly in Finland, what stands out is that many have family responsibilities. And actually here, and I'll come to this shortly, I think policies like the child home care allowance play an important role. We're essentially incentivizing women or paying women to stay out of the labour force and to stay at home and look after their children, which has sort of short-term benefits in terms of it eases the burden on the childcare system, but it does have long-term implications in terms of keeping those women outside of the labour market and also for their children, and I'll come to that shortly. So why are women underperforming? Part of it, I think, is the integration support. Women are often sent along different integration pathways. So while men are often directed towards the labour market and immediately, trying to find work as soon as possible after arrival, women are often more sort of channeled towards social services and school and the family being the main integration part. And that's not to say that family isn't an important element, but perhaps women shouldn't be the only conduit through which we sort of view the family and access the family, because it does have implications for their labour market performance. Then there's also integration incentives. We've spoken about the child home care allowance, which is essentially sort of paying women to stay at home, those with children under the age of 3. But I also wanted to highlight that actually at lower income levels, the impact of the second earner on net income is fairly marginal. You can see if we look at those earning 30% of the average wage, if you see the first column, this is a single earner household, what they would earn, somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 euros a year. Can that be right? I haven't put on the axis the important point to take away is that when you move to 2 earners, actually after you take into account the additional taxes and lost benefits, actually the take-home income is fairly similar, whether there's 1 earner or 2 earners at very low wages. So there, the incentives to work for the second earner are pretty marginal. It has very little impact on the household income. If we look at 60% of the average wage, you can see that there is some impact, but again, not enormous. And it's really only when you get to the average wage that it's worthwhile for a second earner financially worthwhile for a second earner to move into work. So that plays quite strongly on the incentives of those, particularly those who would only be accessing lower skilled employment with more limited wages. And then I said I would come to children and the implications of children. Actually, there's a poor performance in tests of mathematics by country of birth. And here I'm showing it by country of birth and the country of birth of the parents. So this is similar to the figure we looked on overqualification. You can see that among the native born, there's an extremely low proportion of children that fall below level 2 in the PISA mathematics test. So just 10% fall below PISA level 2 in mathematics in Finland. That's of the native-born children. If you look at the foreign-born children, it's much higher, it's slightly above 50%, so nearly half fall below 2 in mathematics with PISA. But I think particularly what's telling is the native-born children of the foreign-born, because these are children who've undertaken their whole education in their country of origin. So these children have been in the Finnish education alongside their native-born peers from the beginning. So this big disparity, again, higher than 50% among the native-born and below, quite significantly below 40% among those children of the foreign-born. This larger disparity is really a failure of policy to some extent. So just to say, you know, this I think is tied in with the fact that many of their mothers are keeping them at home and outside of early childhood education because of this child home care allowance. And the fact that women, migrant women, are often looking after their children in the home rather than sending them to the public daycare, I think has an impact and passes the disadvantage from one generation to the next, because you see that actually Finnish language skills, even among children who were born in Finland, but whose parents are foreign born, and are really not keeping pace. And similarly in mathematics. And this is important because it's a growing population. We've said that, that Finland's foreign born population are growing, but actually if you see that among those 0 to 17, this foreign born population is really getting dwarfed by those born in Finland with 2 foreign-born populations. So just really the point of this final slide is to think about how we integrate these individuals who aren't strictly speaking migrants. They're born in Finland, but how can we insulate them from some of the disadvantage that their parents faced and make sure that they really fully reach their potential in the Finnish and the Nordic labour markets. So that's all I wanted to say to you today. Again, I'm not sure if we're having questions, but if anyone wants to write to me separately, please feel free to do so. I'd be very happy to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emily, for this wildly interesting presentation. Next, I'll invite our panelists to join us. You all have your cameras open and join the stage to discuss what we as education providers can do for quality integration together with the working life. Today, we have Development Director Riley Gönni from Aalto University. Welcome, Riley. Assistant Hugh Fitzpatrick from Eira Adult High School. Welcome, Hugh.
Hello.
Project Coordinator Minna Widgren from the Confederation of Finnish Industries. Hello, Minna.
Hello.
And Development Director, verksamhetsutvecklare Ylva Skogberg from Almega Utbildning, our Swedish sister organization. Glad to have all of you with us today. This discussion is moderated by SIVISTA's Policy Director, Heikki Uusitalo. Heikki, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good day from me also to you. And thank you all our panelists for being here with us. And thank you, Anna-Kaisa. I am now in the frame. Okay, so we start with the panel, and here's a quick opening question for every one of you. Can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself? What kind of an organization is it where you come from? And what is your organization's role in relation to immigration and integration? Can we start with Riley, please?
Okay, good morning, everybody. Great to be here. So my name is Riley Gönni. I'm the Development Director at Aalto University here in Finland. We in Aalto, we work in and across 3 different disciplines. So we have technology, business, and art. We are mid-size, around 14,000 students in our university. Aalto is actually one of the most international universities in Europe, which is maybe a surprise given our location. But when you look at the Times Higher Education rankings, we're the 57th in the world in internationalization. So when we look at our community, we have around a third of our master students are international. Of our doctoral students, it's over 40%. And when we look at the headcount of our academic faculty, it's half already international. So when we're considering immigration and integration, this concerns a big part of our community, of course. So what we do, we have diversity, equality and inclusion activities embedded in all our processes and services, and they are led from the top management. When we look at immigration, we of course work with all the actors in the field, and we try to actively influence the legislation there as well. And this is the area that my unit is responsible for. Of course, internationalization doesn't mean only immigration, but it requires that too. So it's highly important. And I would say that we at Aalto see that internationality is an essential factor, a quality factor in research, education, and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Riley. And can I ask next Minna to say a few words about who you are and where you come from, and what is the role of your organization in immigration and integration?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Minna Widgren, and I'm a project coordinator in the Confederation of Finnish Industries, EK. And EK is a leading spokesperson for Finnish private companies, and we represent 75% of them. So EK represents and defend the interest of the Finnish business community, both national and international. And we are engaged in dialogue with decision makers in all subjects relevant to our members, and immigration and integration is one of them, actually one of the main ones at the moment. And of course, vice versa, we communicate to companies and encourage them to take actions to make international talents to stay and take the advance of expanding requirements opportunities. So in EK, the Finland's growth, of course, for our customers and businesses, and the immigration is the key to solving this challenge.
Thank you, Minna.
Thank you.
And if I may just add a little bit of information there, SIVISTA, our organization, is also a member of EK, and we do not represent businesses because our educational members are not for profit, but they are indeed employers like all other members of EK as well. Okay, next, Hugh, please. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of what you do in terms of immigration and integration?
Yeah, hello. So I'm Hugh Fitzpatrick. I'm an assistant principal here at ERA High School for Adults. We're a general education provider. We're a large education provider. We have about 2,500 students. And we provide basic education as well as upper secondary education. And a large proportion of our students are migrants, whether first generation or second generation, quite a number of them now, especially on our upper secondary program. Our basic education program for adults is targeted at migrants. 99% of those who study with us at basic education are young adults, or possibly from 16 upwards, who complete their basic education with us at ERA. So we have about 1,000 students who are either completing their entire basic education with us, or possibly completing Finnish language courses with us at a basic education level. And personally, I work in mainly in a year between our upper secondary and our basic education. So I work in a so-called preparatory year, where we target a support year at both Finnish, native Finnish students, as well as migrants who want to improve their Finnish language skills.
Thank you, Hugh. And may I just ask you, are you an immigrant also here in Finland?
I am an immigrant. I came to Finland in 1996.
Well, so you have learned firsthand of the experience.
I have been through this transition in Finland. From when I came to Finland, Finland was still a country of net migration. So there were more people leaving Finland than there were coming to Finland. But that changed pretty much at around, because with the EU, that changed around then. And for the entire period I've lived in Finland, it's been a country of net immigration. Yep.
Thank you. And we will actually talk a little bit more about the preparatory program called TUVA later on, which you is leading there at the Eira High School. Lastly, but not least, we have Ylva from Sweden. Please tell us in a few words about your organization and your role in the immigration and integration in Sweden, our dear neighbor country.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Ylva Skogberg, and I come from Almega Utbildning. That's a new association.
Okay.
I think Emily has her microphone on or something.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, we're an association for independent schools, and we are also a member of the Confederation of Swedish Enterprises. Anyways, so we are the independent schools, and then we have municipality schools. And the independent schools are 15% of all the schools in Sweden. And as Emily showed before, we have 20% of the Swedish population have immigrant background, and there are approximately 28 to 30% of the pupils in schools have foreign background. And the independent schools actually have more pupils that have an immigration background than the municipality schools. And since the demography looks like it does, a big issue in Sweden, as you probably know, is integration. And we are working together with the municipality school to try to help this out. And I will probably get back to our problems or what we can do further on.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting stuff. And as the figures from OECD showed, we are facing similar demographics, but Sweden has a lot more immigrant population than Finland at the moment. Let's see how those numbers will change in the future. But now my first question will go to Raili and then Minna. And Raili, in Aalto University, you have the Aalto International Talent Program, which is, well, you can tell us what it is about in a few words. And how did you at the university, now, since our focus in this webinar is leadership, how did you recognize the need for this program, and how did you make it a part of the operations of your university?
Okay, good. So Aalto Talent Program is especially aimed for international students. It's a mentoring program, a group mentoring program where they get mentoring from Finnish companies. And maybe I'll approach this from a little bit different angles. So when we look at the students' point of view, if we look at the different kind of surveys, international students highly value, of course, employability and the possibilities for career advice or working alongside their studies. And that increases, of course, their satisfaction. We also know, especially from the students studying in the technical fields, that if they have their final thesis in a company, they are 4 times more likely to get employed in the country after graduation. So this is highly important from the student's point of view. When we look at the employer's point of view, we actually have had more than 30 companies participating, for instance, this program, and they see this as a possibility to, of course, build their brand, but also for talent attraction. And we see that more than half of the companies, if they once participate, they will come back, and they have found this really important. When we look from the national point of view, the universities and higher education institutions in Finland, we do agreements with the Ministry of Education and Culture, and already in 2017, and especially for the agreement 21-24, there was a lot of issues regarding this in the agreements that we had. So different kinds of developing cooperation between the companies and the international students, and it was called the Talent Boost Service Promise. So we got funding to do these kind of initiatives then in the different higher education institutions, and this kind of support is of course very, very welcome for the universities. Well, then coming back to our university, so how we realized this. This is of course a part. It's a part of a path. So we have had different kinds of services for the international students already before this, and nowadays we have a thing called Aalto Career Design Lab, which is of course meant for all of our students. But when we look at the international students, then this Aalto International Talent Program is the key program. The first pilot for this was done actually in 2019, together with the city of Helsinki and other actors in the locally. And we had one of our own service personnel within this pilot. And as we had very good results from this, we decided to integrate it to our normal services. And I think one of the keys here was also that we had one of our existing service personnel doing the pilot. So it was then quite easy to integrate it there. But of course, this needs a lot of leadership, as Susanna said in the beginning as well. So last autumn, our president took quite a strong stand and sort of reached to the companies in Finland saying that we are here to help you whenever you want a possibility to reach out to our international talent. Let's do something together. So whether it's a mentoring or summer jobs or final thesis, we can do this together. And I personally think that this is something that we cannot solve by ourselves. It has to be done in collaboration. So I think in our case, of course, as I said in the beginning, our community is really, really international. So there's no doubt that this is an important issue. We can find signals from the students, from the companies, from nationally to do this. And there's a high commitment in our university from the leadership to this. So I think, and of course, the external resources that we have gotten, for instance, from the ministry have been really important.
Well, thank you, Riley. So my follow-up question for you was just about resources and commitment inside your organization. So I get from your point of view that the initiative was born internally in the organization, and the resources are coming mainly from the Ministry of Education, which has similar goals when it comes to integration of immigrants. Did I understand correctly?
Yeah, well, I would say yes. So there was a different, the pilot was actually done with the city of Helsinki and other actors. So at that time for the pilot, the funding also came from different sources. But then the support from the Ministry of Education and Culture has, of course, supported this activity. But I would still say that now we have integrated this as part of our normal service functions. So even though there would be no external resources, this is something that we see ourselves that is strategically also important.
Well, thank you, Riley. And you mentioned private companies there, which of course employ a lot of students who graduate from your fields, the biggest of which are technology and business. So now going over to Minna, who works with business and corporations, you are running the program called Match Made in Finland. So can you tell us in a few words about this initiative? And the same question goes for you. How did you recognize the need for this program in your organization?
Thank you. So Match Made in Finland mentoring program was, we realized the same challenge that everyone else, that almost 50% of the talent, international talents leave the country within 5 years. So, and for to be a company that thrives and develops, we need a workforce, and we don't have them in Finland, so we need international talents. So we last summer, we conducted a survey with our member companies and asked about how interested they are about this mentoring program for international students. And almost all of them answered yes, that there's need of that. So we decided to do a pilot of this mentoring program. And since the universities in the Helsinki area has the similar talent mentorship program, we decided to do this with the universities of applied sciences. So we contact 4 University of Applied Sciences here in Helsinki, and the students came from there. And when I started this position in November, I was like, wow, I get over 100 companies that are interested in that. I will just sign the names and let's run the program. But it was not that easy. The companies are interested, but not really ready to act yet. But it's what we did is that we tried to make the participating of the program as easy as possible. So it was really low. There were not how would I say? It's easy to participate. Everything was ready planned, and I was calling the companies and inviting the program, and most of them were interested. And they say we will be in the stand, we will be in the audience, and I've been saying that I have full audience here, so the pilots will get the results, and there will be the audience, and then I'm happy that there were 10 brave companies that participate, and the pilot program is running on the moment, and we have got good results from the students and from the companies, because this is the view of the companies. This is the first interaction with the international students, and this is good possibility for companies to look at their businesses. How important is the Finnish language, which was one of the reasons they think it's they will hire the international talents, and other things that they don't have to do so big commitments for the mentoring. So it was they've been really happy.
Well, thank you, Minna. And now I have a question for you and Riley both. Maybe we can start with Riley and then go to Minna. A follow-up question. Have you encountered resistance or doubts or resistance when you are developing these programs? We know that immigration is a hot topic politically, and so what kind of difficulties did you have to face?
Well, I would say that I think in our case, we are a very diverse community, and sort of in our values, we say that diversity is part of who we are. I think there are not so many doubts in our community whether we should do this or not. As I said, we know from the students, we know from the companies that this is something that's needed. What it was, of course, important to remember also is that our Finnish students also sometimes struggle with connections to the industry, so those have to be also taken into account, and this is why we have, for instance, this career design lab for everybody. But there can be specific programs for groups like international students, and I would say, as was shown in the keynote speech very well, is that we have this declining birth rate, and Finland needs the talent, and we must make sure that everybody who dreams of staying here has this opportunity.
Thank you. Minna, your point of view.
Yeah, the situation in the moment is that the especially the small business doesn't need the workforce right now. There's a big rate of unemployment, and that's the thing they're saying, that they won't participate in mentoring because they don't provide the work for those students, and this is the this is the place for the companies to look forward. It's if they don't have this now, they will have it. Absolutely, they will need workforce later on. So these first steps should be taken now when it's not obligatory. It's they can do it for, they have time to do it. So that was the thing that was I think was the main reason they wouldn't participate in the mentoring, because they will say they won't provide any job for the students. And this is the situation in the Helsinki metropolitan area. And when I was talking to Provence and other places in Finland, it's even the worse. It's there's not the people, companies, even not in the audience, in the stands to be interested about this. So this is a great challenge for us to make everyone interested about the international students and international talents, and we just want to encourage them to join now and be prepared for the future.
Well, maybe you are showing leadership then by encouraging them and making them think forward.
Yeah,
I think that is one of the issues or the points of this webinar and the series of activities where it is connected. It's just that leadership in the field of education. And well, your field is not technically education, but you're pretty close to education. So very well. Now, Hugh, please, the next question is for you about the TUVA education, which you had a wonderful word for it. You said preparatory, if I'm not mistaken, or how
yeah,
would you
I use the word preparatory, yeah.
Okay. And so what is the significance of this preparatory education for the educational paths of immigrants here in Finland? And what does it require from your organization that is different from, let's say, more traditional everyday activities in the field of education?
Yeah, so the first thing to say about our preparatory education, or TUVA in general in Finland, is it's not a program just for migrants. It's a program for all students in Finland who need a year or maybe 2 years, but it's generally a year program for anybody that needs support to gain the skills needed to be successful at upper secondary education, whether that's vocational education or general education. So quite a lot of our students are native Finnish students who come straight from school and need to improve their skills in order to get further onwards. But specifically for migrant students, the migrant students that come to our preparatory year are students that basically need to improve their language skills. And our particular niche in the TUVA program is that we try and provide academic language skills for migrants who specifically are targeting, although they don't have to, they may end up going to vocational education, but generally when they come to us, they're specifically targeting general upper secondary education. So that's why I think our TUVA program is especially important for migrant students, because generally for first generation migrant students, especially those that come to Finland towards the end of their basic education, so they haven't spent a lot of time in Finland before they have to start to think about upper secondary education. There is too little, I think, emphasis on getting an academic general education. The whole policy, the government policy tends to be, and it's not just in Finland, it's also, especially in Denmark, it's even stronger in Denmark, is the tendency is to say, right, let's get these people into vocational education and into work. And that is the general line. And that might be that might be a good idea as well. But there are definitely some first generation migrants, young adults, teenagers that want to complete a general academic education and maybe go on to university. So that's what we provide, and we give them. It's not the first step in their education because they already need to have gained maybe 1 to 3 years of education first in language skills before they kind of really are able to access our program. But that's what we try and provide them. We try and provide them a year of academic Finnish language skills so that after 1 year with us, they can move on, maybe continue in our school and continue to our general education, upper secondary education, or many of them then reintegrate into ordinary gymnasium, Lukio, upper secondary schools, you know, for youth programs. So because many of our students are quite young, they're 16, 17 years old. So I think that's the specific thing that our particular TUVA does. Obviously, TUVA is in general also the basic idea is it's an access program for migrants of all ages. Once they've gained their first step, their first bit of language skills, they can use TUVA as an access program into getting into vocational education. Yeah.
And so my follow-up question for you here is, what does this highly specialized program require of your organization that is different from its other activities?
Well, in a sense, it fits well within our program because adult education is highly modular in its approach, and that's the case for our basic education, and that's the case for our upper secondary education. So we are able to tailor. We're able to tailor, you know, specific modules to individual students. All our students have their own study plans, they have their own goals, they have their own schedules. So in the sense to tailor something to students is something that we've been doing. We've always done that. What particularly, I think what particularly the TUVA program, the preparatory year at our school for migrants has done, and its predecessor, because there was a predecessor to this, which was specifically designed for upper secondary, is it's been a motor within our school of helping all our teachers, not just in the preparatory year, but also at our upper secondary program, realize how to be able to teach academic Finnish to migrants, of how to improve academic language skills for people that might come with quite a weak level of language when they start, and how to specifically concentrate on those academic language skills. And that's helped our entire organization.
Well, thank you, Hugh. And so now question for you, Ylva. The situation in Sweden is, excuse me, as we realized earlier, it is similar to Finland, but more advanced in the sense that the proportion of students with an immigrant background has increased in both municipal and private schools. So how does the diversifying student body in schools affect the members of your organization, the education providers?
First, I'm going to describe a little bit about our educational system, because it's been like built the same way for 50 years, and it's been sort of like a one size fits all, and that doesn't really work with this demographic change. And today it's like 25% of our students leave the 9th grade without finishing grades, which is a big problem. So what we have to do is trying to change the system a bit more so we can help out students much earlier. I think the Tuva example is really interesting, but I will come back to that later, because what we have had is lots of students coming in like 7th or 6th grade or something like that. And of course, language is a big problem for them because they can't accomplish that kind of level when they finish. So and of course the diversity, it adds on, the teachers trying to get like the high level students and the students with a lot more difficulties in the same classroom is a big problem, obviously, and they trying to get that. Anyway, so what happens is that we have to sort of diversify the schools, how the schools work, how the teaching works a bit more. What the independent schools have been doing is trying to form sort of having a new version of schools with English as a main language and that sort of thing, and trying to integrate more, doing that way. But the main thing that we have to do is start earlier. I mean, the students that are coming a bit late, we have to challenge them and help them out further on, but everything in the educational, the life path sort of starts in the preschools, and we have to start earlier there and start with languages. Just as you said, language is key. I mean, it's key for the education, it's key for working life and everything. And I mean, we proud ourselves, we speak English in Sweden and but seriously, you have to speak Swedish to be like really, to really fit into to society. And also as Emily, I think, yeah, talked about how it works in the immigration families, that they stay at home the children stay at home much longer. And we have to sort of start education earlier, because when the children have a vocabulary, they help out their parents and they help themselves, and they sort of get a stronger position to get integrated into the to society. So I hope that answers your question in a way.
Well, yeah, a little bit. Now the last part of my question, I'm going to repeat it for you.
Please.
How does the diversification of the student body affect the activities in your member organizations, in the schools? What is
in our schools, the independent schools?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's also that trying to use different pedagogic ways to teach. Yeah. Instead of using the one size fits all system, we try to adapt much more and have like different ways of teaching. Some have more, let's say, like open schedule sort of that fits some of the students. Some have more like the English structured, that sort of thing, a bit more strict schools that fits some of the students. And also some of our independent schools that works in very segregated areas, they work a lot with the parents much more than in municipality schools, to try to include parents much more in education. So it's more like a leadership from the principal organizing the school in different ways. And some of the municipality schools don't think they can do that. Of course they can, but still the independent schools sort of feel that they have more liberty to do this, and they are sort of adapting to the environment much more.
Well, thank you. Anna-Kaisa, can you put the chat on the screen, because I think we have a comment there from an EIRA alumni. Melanie Messner tells us that she was an immigrant in Finland, and without EIRA I wouldn't be where I am today. Well, thank you for this comment. This is good to hear. Hugh, I wanted to bring this up now because I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. So, so reflecting on what you just heard, and the very complimentary message shown here, what new measures would you suggest that schools and educational providers take so that we could better cap the difference between the native and immigrant population in our countries?
Yeah, well, first of all, greetings to Melanie, and thank you for that nice comment. as a side issue there, I feel that Melanie was one of our successful students, but I think she is no longer in Finland. So she's one of these examples of somebody that graduated and went, but that happened. But I think, to be honest, Emily, when she talked, hit the nail on the head, really, when she talked about the linguistic gap for second generation migrants. And I think that is a particularly worrying thing. And she definitely then pinpointed that one thing which for second generation migrants is that daycare, early learning and daycare, I think is especially significant. Daycare plays a huge role, I think, in the Finnish education system. Sometimes it's neglected, but although young Finns, the young children don't go to school until they're 6 now for preschool, but they've learnt an awful lot before then, and they learn a lot of it in daycare. That's from my personal experience. So I think that to address that issue of getting the same amount, getting all people into daycare, I think is as at an early age, I think is important. That's for second generation. But I think for first generation migrants, okay, then perhaps it comes from me because I'm into preparatory years, but I think that for teenagers when they come into the system, or for children when they come into the system, there used to be a system where they had a so-called valmistava, preparatory year of language skills before they were integrated into the general system. And now the emphasis is on integrating them straight into the general system. And I think that maybe has its I think that system, which used to be, could be revived, because language, again, is the key. And it's important to do it at the start. Our experience is that the more that you can emphasize language skills at the start of the path, so you delay the start of the path to give greater emphasis on language, and then the end path can go really quickly. You can catch up. You can catch up later, but at the start it's important to take time, because Finnish is a very different language from most Indo-European languages. You know, it's its own thing. So it does take time for people to learn it, and give people that maybe extra preparatory year would be my thing. Also, basic education.
Thank you, Hugh. And I must ask, are you a language teacher yourself?
I'm not a language teacher. I used my specialty is history and civics.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a child of language teachers, so I hear something very familiar in your way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and now going on over to Ylva, and to add a little ingredient here, when we're talking of language, some alarming new results are pointing to a direction where some teenagers are not proficient in any language at all. Not in this country, not in Finnish, not in Swedish, not in English either, and not even their parents' original language. And that is very alarming. So that's like a little bit extra ingredient for my question to Ylva, but the question is basically the same. What new measures do we need to take in our countries to better integrate young people with immigrant backgrounds?
Honestly, I just have to agree with you, because I think that extra year that you talked about having, like, as an introduction year for the older students would be excellent. And also, preschool daycare is still a solution to most of the language skills for immigrants and for all children. We actually see the same problem in the countryside with, like, native speaking children. So it's Swedish children. So I think that starting early is the key And also, I mean, most Swedish native children start in preschool when they are like 1 year old, or perhaps 1.5. And as you said, that's when you start to learn. You get the vocabulary. You start sort of to read and write and count in mathematics already then. And yeah, so I think actually preschool is key for immigrant children. And also I would really recommend that extra year that I hadn't heard about that solution for younger students, but it would have really made life so much easier for all the young ones who came in 2015 that entered school when they were 9 years old. I mean, seriously, it's, of course you can't learn language that quick, so and then graduate with the full grades. So I think language is key, as we said before, and I think we have to start early. And also, right now we usually we more or less pinpoint the students when they are 8th grade, and that's much too late. So we have to start, I mean, identify children who hasn't got the vocabulary already in 1st grade.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was I more or less repeated use conclusions, but I think that would be the solution for Sweden as well. And also we are trying to restructure the Swedish system now and prolonging the dedication to 10 years instead of 9. Not sure that's a solution, but let's see what happens. But still, focus on language early.
Well, thank you. As I'm the policy director, so I must be familiar with government policy here in this country. So I would like to point out here that in the government platform for the current government, who is entering their 3rd year soon, is an evaluation of this TUVA model and finding also its strengths and weaknesses. It is relatively new, but not everyone is happy with the results. But is it that the incentives needs to be changed somehow, or what should be done? We don't know yet. We are waiting for results of the evaluation, and of course, evaluation and being open to change is part of leadership also. My closing question for everyone, and here we have 2 minutes for each of you, and I will be looking at my watch, and if when you go close to 2 minutes, I will start doing like this, like in the parliament, knocking, so your time is up, and I will do that a little bit early so you can just finish your sentence. So my closing question for you is the global situation. Everyone is talking about war, security, threats, and we have a feeling of cocooning and looking inwards. So we need in the society, I believe, a counterforce that creates an open, international, tolerant country and a continent. So what would you say are the key ingredients for such a hopeful future? Let's say 10 or 20 years time? What does it require of us as educational providers and people who work and lead in the field of education? May we start with you, Riley, please?
Okay, that's a broad question, but I think something that's definitely crucial for our countries to be solved. I think, as we have seen today, the data shows that this is something that's coming to face us in the coming 10 or 20 years, and it's something we need to solve. This is something that nobody can solve on their own, so we need to do this together. I think that's the most important key to the answer. And maybe I will quote now the Finnish education employers, so SIVISTA slogan, which is that education is the answer. And I think it works here very well. So hope is created through education and by ensuring that there are equal opportunities for each and everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Riley. You stayed very well within the time limits, and also I give you an extra point for quoting our slogan. Thank you. Education is the answer. And or maybe maybe for our speakers of Germanic languages, not only just education, but Bildung, or in German, Bildung. So it's a little bit wider concept than just school education. Next up, Minna, please. What is your point of view? Hopeful ingredients for the future.
Oh, I love this question. It's a wide one, as Riley told earlier. But I think oh, sorry, I have some problems with my. Can you see? Can you hear?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Although Finns' attitudes towards immigration have changed, there's still room for improvement in attitudes. So I think anyone who comes to Finland to work or study must feel welcome. And it all starts with attitudes. And unfortunately, there's still a lot to do. And in order to Finland to be an international and equal, safe country for everyone, everyone must look their own attitude. So in a personal level, it all starts there, because also the leaders in the companies, they are also the persons. So the attitudes, even the hired ones, they are there. So personally, I believe that by increasing love for yourself and others will make a big difference. And then, of course, there's political decisions that has to be made. Finland needs to be marketed better so that the international talents find Finland and come here to work and study. Migration process needs to be further improved, and the permit application process should be smooth. And there's okay, there's many political decisions that should be made, but I would sum up that it all starts with ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Minna. And next, Hugh, same question for you. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
What hopefully?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, first of all, I'd say I always find it very difficult to understand negative things towards immigration, because the question is, where would we be without migration? If people hadn't moved around for the entirety of history, we'd be nowhere. And that goes for everywhere. So I mean, people move around. It's important that we recognize that, and important that we recognize that that's part of a healthy economy as well. Let's take a practical approach. Actually, if you can educate migrants, especially first generation migrants, effectively, it's incredibly cheap, because you don't have to pay for all the early years. Usually they'll come halfway through or towards the end of their education. You provide the end of their education, you put them into the job market, and that costs a lot less than it would cost for a native Finn who comes from birth, and you have to pay all the costs. So in fact, an effective immigration policy makes a lot of economic sense. Of course, the downside is if you get it wrong, it can cause significant amount of economic problems as well. But I think, yeah, you have to be open, and a successful migration policy makes economic sense.
Well, thank you, Hugh. And then Ylva, please, your point of view. Hopeful ingredients for the future.
No, but it's since we're talking about education, making sure that every child leaves school successful and with hopes for the future, because that will give hope for the entire society and for the parents if they have been sort of disappointed with the move to Sweden. And with that, if everyone leaves school successful, that will sort of it will influence the entire society, including the native Swedes, who will then sort of include everyone, because it's always difficult to meet someone who you think is different and you're a bit shy. Swedes very shy. And then I think the real integration will start. And also, I think that the Nordic countries, we should actually work together a bit more. Because in my point of view, we have lost it a little bit. And we challenge the same things, and we can learn from each other. For an example, I hadn't heard of Tuva, and I'm inspired.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And also, I would like to invite your organization to collaborate more with ours. So we'll take the boat to Stockholm and come for a visit, and you'll do the same. And let's also meet in the FE, the European Federation of Educational Employers context, if we can. But thank you so much for your kind words and your insight, and that same goes for every one of the panelists. Now it is my task here in the last 5 minutes to say a few words, sort of closing words. Prepare for change. And listening to the panel here, I was reminded of the Finnish word sisu, which is sometimes translated as guts, but I think a more appropriate translation or explanation for this word and this expression is that it is determination, even when there is no clear reason to have it. So there might be obstacles, there might be some difficulties. It might look like you're going to fail, but you're going to go on anyway. That is the traditional Finnish way of thinking of how we do and how we go from management to leadership. I'm sure that in the field of education, in this country and Europe-wide, we have great managers everywhere. We can all do that very well. But what is the difference between management and leadership? Well, I was thinking about this, and I thought my own personal definition is the manager does very well what he's told to do. He or she organizes everything so that it works, but leader is the one who tells what to do, and sometimes does it even without you realizing it. So I looked into this, and I found this quote from an American business scientist. He said, managers change behavior, but leaders change your thoughts. So they give you a vision and a way of thinking of going forward. So we heard here lastly of those hopeful ingredients for the future and how education is the key for a better future in our Nordic countries and in our European countries in the face of all these challenges of the modern world. And talking about the modern world, well, I'm 45 now. This was not the world that I was promised. In our system of education, we were taught the world keeps getting better and we are taking steps forward with democracy and freedom of speech and the free movement of everything and information. And then it didn't quite go as planned. We are now in a tricky situation. And that only underlines the need to understand it better. Education, as Hugh said, is the key. We heard here today about different kinds of gaps. We heard about the gender gap between women and men in our countries. We heard about the generational gaps between different generations of immigrants. And we heard of the linguistic gaps. We can also look at the PISA results and see other kinds of gaps. I believe these gaps are dangerous because those who do not want us to be friendly and nice will take advantage of those gaps and turn them into divisions. So, going from management to leadership, as I said earlier, I'm sure that there are lots of good managers, but we must change the way how people think. As educational leaders, it is our job to communicate to the society this vision that education is the key to a better future for you, for me, for our society, for our country, for Europe. It is our job to change the way of thinking, not only among our students, but also wider rangingly in society. And since immigration is a hot topic with political divisions and different schools of thought, we must sometimes do it with sisu. That means even when it looks desperate, we must still keep trying. So that is my final thought to you. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining our webinar. Thank you, Effie and the ELNE network for coordinating this event. And special thanks to my team member, Anna-Kaisa, who made this a reality. And we are standing inside a studio here in Helsinki. Thank you very much.